All righty then. Let's see. All right. Hey, y'all doing tonight? Hang tight. I'm working to get all this other stuff done. All righty. So now I'm just waiting on Jonathan to come. Hopefully he'll be in here shortly. We'll get to going. There you are. All right. Jonathan, hit that link that I just put in the chat. Get everything set up. As soon as you do, just X out of YouTube. RD, what up? What up? How's everybody? Hope everybody's doing good. We're just waiting on Jonathan to get set up, and then we'll get to rolling here. So anyway, welcome guys. For those of y'all that are first timers, do me a favor. If this is the first time in my chat, just say hello. The rest of you say hello anyway. But if you'll look, there's a little thumbs up button. If you'll just hit and give me a thumbs up, that helps out with the algorithm and all that kind of thing. If you'll do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, we are laid back. Grab yourself your favorite drink, get a dip, get a smoke, whatever it is you do, and kick back. All right. There he is down in the basement. All right. There he is, Jonathan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Matt. How are you?
Oh man, this is doing awesome, brother.
Yes, sir.
Doing awesome.
It's been a Monday.
I literally got off work at 7:30, ate a sandwich, and got this ready in 30 minutes. Billy, what's going on? How you doing? Well, let's see. We got 9 people in here. All right. First of all, Jonathan, welcome. This is a very laid back live stream that I have. There's really no format unless I all of a sudden figure something up. But what I'd like for you to do is introduce yourself to the guys that are here and tell us a little bit about yourself. Waterfowl, you're just whatever you want. Just take the floor for a minute.
Can do. All right. So I'm Jonathan Lieber. I'll be 31 this coming November. I'm born and raised here in South Carolina. I grew up basically in Moncks Corner. I joined the Air Force at a young age. I got to travel around the world. I'm thankful for that. And that kind of got me to where I am today professionally in life. So that's always a blessing. I kind of grew up in the outdoors. My dad started hunting when I was about 9. And, I think what I can really remember that got me started with it was they used to make me walk around with an old New England firearm single shot 12 gauge. And I had to have the barrel broke. I couldn't have the barrel joined together. I had to have the barrel broke until I was old enough and learned. But ever since then, that's kind of what got me started into the outdoors. Professionally, I am a construction and engineering manager. I've been doing that ever since I was in the Air Force for a long time now. My background and I got a lot of actual academic work. It's been a long career of academia for me in the last 10 to 12 years. I've got dual degrees in construction technology, civil engineering technology, and construction management. I've got an MBA with an emphasis in construction management, and I actually went back to school for wildlife and fisheries management. I was hoping to make the transition a few years back just to get into wildlife biology. And, everything I do, and anybody that knows this or knows me can tell you this, if I'm not looking at a map, finding out where ducks are going to be or where to hunt ducks or why ducks are eating or what they're eating and why they're there doing what they're doing, then I'm not really doing anything at all. That's just all I think about is ducks all the time. And unfortunately, not to sound too snobby with it, the money is just not in that kind of career field.
No, it ain't.
When you get to my kind of level professionally, trying to make a transition to go from, what I do to that kind of salary range, it just wasn't possible. So I started brainstorming, getting 31, trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to be a part of the waterfowl industry. Because, I don't want to be too deep in it. I've got a lot of opinions out there that some don't agree with just the way things are today. But, I wanted to do it in a way I can make a positive impact. So about 35 days ago, I jumped on a TikTok and decided I was going to start making funny TikToks to build a following. And, as slowly as the following built up, I'd start making some content that would hopefully resonate with some waterfowlers and duck hunters. And that kind of got us to here we are today, all wrapped up in a couple minute explanation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm typing in the chat. I'm just letting you run it, and I can see. Now you have not only TikTok, you have Instagram, correct? Am I correct in that? You have Instagram?
Yeah, I have Instagram. I made the TikTok and the Instagram page at the same time. I've been pretty slack about posting, waterfowl related stuff on the Rewind Waterfowl Instagram page. Just because it's the TikTok the last 35 days, I started 35 days ago. And since then it's honestly been blowing up big time. And
right.
Whenever I got a notification that comes up on my phone, that's the first thing I go to.
How about YouTube? You have a YouTube channel?
I do have a YouTube. So that's what I was chatting you with when I joined here. I've got a couple of those same TikToks I put on the actual TikTok platform that are on the YouTube right now.
There
but
you go. Appreciate it, Billy.
This season here coming, I plan to do a lot of recording of the actual duck trips that we go on and some of the waterfowl hunting we do and some of the retriever training tests that we're going to coming up.
And, of course, you got the Rewind. For those who don't know, he also has a podcast also called Rewind Waterfowl. And I got you, Billy. Appreciate it. He, like I said, he has a podcast. Tell us about, and we're going to get into some other stuff. I just want the guys that follow me that are in here tonight to really understand you and get to know you, and and then hopefully follow you, and then we're going to get into our original stuff that we had talked about a little bit later on. But tell us a little bit about Rewind Waterfowl podcast. What was the concept, and what do you plan on doing with that, and what is your thinking on that?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of background on it, when I started duck hunting, I think the first time we went duck hunting, it was off the Edisto River. We were a member of a club out in St. George. And I went wood duck hunting for the first time when I was 13. And then from that moment, it's just been pure addiction. My dad got into it right around the same time because a lot of his friends were, we'd only deer hunted up to this point and turkey hunted every now and then. And so his friends that we joined the club with actually got him into duck hunting. And I started hunting about the same time he did. Well, my uncle Arthur, who'd be my great uncle, his direct uncle, he was born and raised here in South Carolina as well. And he was the ultimate duck hunter, the first ultimate duck hunter I really, got introduced to when I was young. And he, aside from hunting here in South Carolina, he took me and my dad on our first trip out to Arkansas for the first time, hunting public land, and it was the three of us. Around that same time, I was 14 or 15 years old, and he used to tell us stories about what duck hunting in South Carolina used to be like, but then also what duck hunting in Arkansas used to be like. Because for everything that's going on in South Carolina, all the habitat degradation and the failure of upkeep on some of our public lands, that's all happening across the board in every state that you go to. So not only was I hearing all these stories about how great Arkansas was, but hearing these phenomenal stories about what duck hunting in South Carolina used to be like. And, back when widgeon was a trash duck, before Santee Cooper started spraying the lakes and the river system to get rid of this hydrilla. And, you had mallards jumping into green timber off the Santee River and things like that. And, he would explain it in such a way that kind of an old or redneck down south boy would do. You could see it in your head, right? You could just see it the way he would explain it. And that love I already had for duck hunting and ducks as a whole, and the stories he would tell us, and every trip that we took after that, it made me fall more and more in love with it. And naturally, just being the little bit of a competitive guy that I am, there's always a challenge that comes with duck hunting. And it was just a perfect fuel to add to the fire that I had for waterfowling to, make me so obsessive with this. So, I've kind of I'm a younger guy. I'm only 31. I'm getting older. No offense to you older guys that are listening, but I'm getting older. But I still like to think that I've got that kind of old school mentality when it comes to this. And, I like to think of it. And the reason I went back to school to get a wildlife biology degree was because I always heard that hunters were the number one conservationist. And, there's a code of ethics when you're in the woods, when you're on the water. You know what I mean? There's things you're not supposed to do and way you're supposed to hold yourself, as there is with anything, right? You can kind of akin duck hunting in a way with its kind of unwritten book of ethics to those in golf, right? There's rules that you learn over time. And there's a way we're supposed to hold ourselves, and we're supposed to be stewards of the environment around us. And I feel like that not only have we lost all of our birds, but we've lost that same mentality in the woods, and we've lost that same mentality when it comes to caring for the land and trying to preserve the natural resource that is waterfowl. Right. And so I wanted to start this podcast. Like I said, I'd been brainstorming just what I could do to get into an industry that would, one, have a positive impact, two, not make it to where I have to sell my soul and I'm not chasing brand sponsorships, right? That I can be a little bit lighthearted with the stuff I put out, but also try to educate, just based off of my background, having, been a duck hunter for so long, and then also having that love for conservation and that little bit of schooling I have for that wildlife degree. And maybe I can get on a platform where I can tell stories of the old days and help paint this picture of what we need waterfowling across the country to get back to. And so that's kind of led me here. And like I said, I made some funny TikToks to help kind of build a following, and I'm trying to get to a point where I can throw some pure content in there and start uniting a waterfowl community to maybe egg some people to start asking the powers that be the right questions. And as we all know, there's an old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So,
well, that's hopefully what we hope. Yeah, there's are you familiar with the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate?
I am. Yes. So
okay.
I've spoken to David Strickland in the past. I used to be a member out there, or a member on that Facebook page. But yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
Okay. They're basically the only one in South Carolina that I know of that tries to do anything as a group. But anyway, man, this is cool. I saw your video. You came across my FYP on TikTok on your numbers and that you brought up. And what was really funny, because I was getting that together to do a live stream tonight, and we were going to talk about the numbers. So it all kind of fell together, I think. And that's why I got in touch with you and said, hey, man, come join me. Let's talk about this. I got, quite a few waterfowlers that come in and watch my stuff, and especially come on my chat and hang out. But give me 1 second. Let's see here. I just want to make sure that I'm seeing something right. Charles Holden, what's going on, brother? Glad you came in. Pork Chop, what's going on? Of course, Billy's in here. Billy from SoFlo Outdoors. Hayes Green, thank you for coming in. Do me a favor, if it's your first time here, hit that thumbs up button for me. Jeff Barris is in the house. Mark J. Larson, the world's greatest coyote trapper in the world. Who else is in here? That's what I see so far. At least that's who's commented. I hear you, brother. So let's start dabbling in, and a lot of the guys that follow me, some are from South Carolina, some are from the East Coast, but I got a lot of guys that are out west, and sometimes they just cannot fathom our duck situation here. And I do my best to try to tell them, listen, the Atlantic flyway at one time was unbelievable. And it's just gone down. In my opinion, a lot of that has to do with degradation of the nesting grounds, population of people and building and tearing up habitat. But a lot of it has to do with habitat that is there that is not being maintained by the state. And we'll get into some private land stuff here in a little bit, but our state, and I've said it once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it 1,000 times, they are terrible nowadays in trying to maintain our public lands. And I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's a big topic of discussion, especially when it comes to your category 1 and 2 WMAs, right? And as a public land waterfowler that's been out there and hunted all around these WMAs, whether it be the draw hunt or just around them, it's a good thing to have when you're looking for these birds to come down from up north. And also it's a hard thing to be able to sit on the outskirts of these dikes and watch birds bounce and forth back between shots, just getting shot at inside these WMAs. And I say that because it's a double-edged sword, but you've got to have one, right? You need those kind of solid wintering grounds that are those Cat 1 and Cat 2 WMAs, so these birds can come down here and they have a reason to stay. Because I mean, you point at what they do to the lakes with the spraying of vegetation, and you lose food there. So we don't really have anything that would hold these birds. And that's a big gripe that a lot of guys used to have, 5 to 10 years ago, was these birds would straight overshoot us and just head straight down to Florida.
Right.
And now everything is kind of fallen to the wayside. So even the category 1 and 2 WMAs that used to get all the attention, they're not getting any attention anymore. Yep. And I think it's because of a big shift in what the priorities are in South Carolina. You can factor in light pollution and urbanization and the buildup of everything that's coming in. But then also when you see that and everybody sees the dollar signs that are associated with that on an economic scale across the state, then the priority switches from the public land hunter that is you and I, and it goes to, how can we make sure more people have room here to duck hunt or to move here, and when they're not worried about the duck hunter.
Yeah, they're more worried about tourism. I mean, case in point, what's the place down in Georgia? They just bought, not bought, they were given to it. Heck, I did a video on the dang thing. The plantation down there. I mean, it's really not that big. The state, was won that area in a lawsuit against the nuclear people upstate, and they turned it over to tourism, and it's got a great little pond. And I keep hearing everybody say, well, it's a roosting pond. Well, maybe so, but it's still a spot that could be turned into a lottery type hunt. If not for the And my idea was to turn it into a youth hunt for youth hunts only and for veterans hunts. So you'd only have a handful of hunts a year on the property, and that they would be lottery drawn, but it would only be a handful of hunts, and yet it still can get hunted and still get, you could do both. You could do the tourism of it, and you could also do the hunting aspect of it. But the state DNR didn't want it, and they turned it over to tourism. But anyway, going back to our Cat 1s real quick, we've only got one that is productive, out of all the Cat 1s that we got, and it's the only one that's productive because they got a full-time manager. The rest of them, they don't even have full-time managers, and a lot of them, they don't even have part-time managers. So we got issues here as far as it goes on our WMAs, our waterfowl WMAs. And I get into that, and we have private landowners, which I am not going to tell a man what to do on his private land. I would never do that. I have certain things that I don't like what's being done, but I'm not going to tell a man that he can't do it, especially if it's all in the legalities, i.e. planting corn. I don't think corn is the best product. I think rice is a better product, or moist soil management. But what a man does on his own property is his business. But I think that the private landowner, and my hats are off to them, they are the only ones out there that are keeping ducks in our state. If it wasn't for the private landowner, because of the food sources on our wildlife management areas and our what I call other public or open public, we wouldn't have any ducks, period. Not at all.
That's right. And it's, as a public land hunter in a state struggling like South Carolina, just like, I noticed they said in the chat that, Louisiana is the same way anymore. But in these states that struggle, it's easy as a public land hunter to look at the private landowner, case in point, the guys that run these clubs around here where they, they release some clip toes, but at the same time, they're killing lynx, teal, and ringneck. It's easy to look at those guys with a little bit of jealousy and be disgruntled about it, right? Because you're seeing these guys stacking birds up, and you don't have the 20 grand it takes to go and buy a blind for the year.
For 60 days.
Yeah, for 60 days. And it's understandable. But at the same time, you've got to look at that and think the only reason that you have a chance to kill anything or shoot any bird over your decoys right now is 90% those private landowners at the moment.
Right. I agree 100%.
And it hurts to say, again, nobody wants to admit that. I don't like admitting it, but when you've got public lands that are failing to the scale that ours are, you've got to be honest to yourself.
Now we're going to slowly get into these numbers, but last year we went down to 2 mallards for the Atlantic Flyway. And it was said that we're going, as far as the Atlantic Flyway is concerned, we're going down to 2 mallards, 2 drakes, or a hen and a drake, but only 2 mallards. And the reason was because the numbers were falling. And then all of a sudden, this year, we're all looking at the numbers, and I know you got them in front of you. And if I could ever figure out how to post that stuff while doing a live stream, I would do it. But we saw the numbers, and I said, okay, I got no problem. Let's go down to 2 mallards. Okay, ain't got a problem with that. But then all of a sudden, the Atlantic Flyway bumps up to 4. And I almost lost my mind. He's in Southern Florida. And so I'm sitting there going, why are we going back to 4 mallards? What is the reason? And if you could run off some of your numbers, I think you had some numbers from 2018, and run off some of those numbers while you got it. I know you got it in front of you,
Yeah. So I'll run off those 2018 numbers, but if I could say one thing really quick, I think would be interesting to everybody listening. If no one is super familiar with this, there is a professor out of the University of Texas, El Paso. His name is Dr. Phil Lavretsky. And Dr. Lavretsky had been doing case studies about the mallards population and its decline and what was going on in the Atlantic Flyway. And the main concern for this, and this is the really interesting point, is that, you know, back in the day when we had these game farms releasing domesticated birds, you know, they were super flighty. They didn't respond well to calls. They were more so attracted to the dinner bell, right? So they believed that at, you know, that kind of domesticated population, those birds that were reared in captivity, they were breeding with the wild mallards. And that was causing some of those genetic traits to get into the wild mallard population. It was polluting the wild mallard population in theory. And that's what was causing this drastic decline. However, within the last 2 months, he's followed up on that study. And I would encourage everybody to look this up. And they are finding that is not the case. That, you know, over the last few months, and it was funny that, you know, I read this before this whole back to 4 birds came out in the Atlantic Flyway, is those original theories were proven wrong, and they were proven wrong by the black duck. So they had the same theory about the black duck in the Atlantic Flyway having the same issues with those domesticated mallards breeding in. And it, you know, within 2 generations, the black duck, its genetic code was essentially rejecting those domesticated traits. So the theories about why we were going down to, you know, 1 mallard in the Atlantic Flyway and why these domesticated birds were ruining the wild population, they've kind of gone back on their words for that. So that's something interesting that everybody can read in. But if we want to go back to the 2018 numbers, let me pull them back up here.
Yeah, I have not seen that updated study yet. That's interesting.
Yeah, so the 2018 numbers, and, you know, this is what really caused me super alarm when I first saw these new numbers that got released. And going back to 2018, we were at 9.25 million mallards, breeding mallards in North America. So these surveys that come out, this is about adult birds that made it back up to the breeding grounds to be able to breed. This isn't the actual brood survey or the number of young birds that were hatched. These are adult birds that went back up to breed. And in 2018, we had 9.255 million mallards. And you compare that to the year before, in 2017, we had 10.48, so 10.5 million birds. Now, our average mallard number, or average mallard population since 2002 has been 7.5 million. We haven't been as low as we are right now since 1983. And that's the really big alarming point I think everybody should take note for, is because, you know, not to mention that the Atlantic Flyway guys, we're back up to 4 mallards when we probably don't need to be, if I'm being honest. But also, you know, we haven't seen any kind of like downshift in bag limits from Canada all the way to Texas in mallard numbers or mallard bag limits. Yet, you know, we're at half the birds we were 6 years ago. And that's the super alarming part about this.
Exactly. And, you know, being you're from South Carolina, I'm from South Carolina. For all intents purposes, the Santee Refuge is the last stop for the mallard. For all intents purposes. Yes, some do fly further, but still, it is, for the most part, it's the stop. And when I was growing up, I mean, you would have, this may not sound much in a broad scheme of things, but in a small area, you would have 50,000 wintering mallards at the Santee Refuge, not to include all the other ducks, but just the mallards. You know, now that's kind of gone away. You're lucky if you get 1,000 right now, ducks, period, that are wintering here. The numbers are dropping. You stated that. You know, I still see a concern about going from. I wasn't bothered when we went to 2 mallards at all. I thought it was something that we needed, and
Right.
Now we've jumped back up to 4. But the numbers, this year's numbers, just don't. correlate. I mean, there's something wrong, and it's money. That's all I can say. It's all about the money.
Yeah, and I think that's, well, if you start following all the trails and going down rabbit holes, I mean, you can talk conspiracy theory. But the thing is, it's like with South Carolina DNR, and this is the big bone I have to pick with Ducks Unlimited. We give South Carolina DNR just off of our state stamps. What is it, $15 now? And we give these guys so much money, but yet they have nothing to show for it. I mean, some of our Cat 1 and Cat 2 WMAs are holding 100% less birds than they have in the past, or having 100% less birds harvested. And it's the same thing for DU. We continue to funnel these guys money. And I mean, these guys and us, as the blue collar everyday hunter, right? So I'm talking specifically the public land assassins that we are, the whole crew that we got going, right? The public land everyday hunter, we give them the money we can, whether that be in our federal duck stamp. These guys are helping use that money, or whether that be donations straight to DU. And we have nothing to show for it. And the biggest thing to me, in my opinion, with this, and I want it to be known and just say overall that with weather changing trends, I'm not going to say climate control because that's a bunch of hogwash, if I'm being honest. With weather changing trends and the way the climate goes and population densities and droughts, things that we truly can't control, you're going to have fluctuation in these numbers. And when you're talking 10 million birds, you know what I mean? Having fluctuations of 1.5 to 2 million is not super alarming. But when you have fluctuations of 60 and 70% of your flight, then you need to be concerned. And right. We don't have anything to show for that with all the money that's been put into it. And speaking to that tune, until this year, right, it's surprising in a sense, and even DU biologists have said they're surprised about how the pintail have rebounded in some of these numbers. But nobody realizes how close we were to the pintail being closed season.
Closed down.
We weren't going to be able to harvest any pintails. We were about 2% away, and magically we jump up 24%.
And so, I mean, let's face a fact. Counting birds is not as easy as what people think. I can attest to that. These guys will fly over a pothole. They got a grid, and they put that grid down and go, okay, there's should be that X amount of duck in that grid, and they do a roundabout and formulate a number. And I know that during COVID, somebody mentioned it in here earlier, during the so-called COVID, and I'm probably going to get banned now from YouTube for saying that. But, they couldn't fly by themselves. I mean, it's, I don't get it. I don't know what was, why they couldn't continue the counts. Where are the birds? I mean, I'm not saying that we're going to see them here in South Carolina, but I mean, across the country, you're not seeing what they're saying. It's just not happening.
Yeah, it's strange. Not only in tune of the birds, but then also what they're saying about hunters, right? Like, it's interesting. SoFlo put in the chat that he doesn't have enough hunters out there in South Florida, but I mean, everywhere else across the country, you've got people getting shot over duck holes. That's how dense the hunter is across the landscape right now. So you have less birds and more hunters than in my opinion, ever, especially waterfowling. And it's just, there's been such an emphasis in DU and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. All these guys put such an emphasis on preserving these wetlands, which these ephemeral wetlands are super important. But preserving the wetlands and preserving this land, but we're on the verge of not having any birds to utilize the land we have preserved.
Yeah. That's all. That goes back to nesting grounds and predator control and the whole 9 yards and fur prices being low as they are and not enough trappers. There's so much that falls into all this. But could you go through the numbers that were given this year on the breeding? I think you had the breeding pair numbers.
Yeah. Let me see.
And we're going to try to correlate them with 2018, because I think that was because right after 2018 we had the COVID thing, and and then we didn't have any numbers to back up.
Can you see these numbers I have up now, everybody?
Hang on. I didn't see you put that in there.
Yes, sir.
Here we go. I'm going to enlarge this if I can.
Here. If you can't, I can. How about that?
There we go. We're still streaming. It's just, I just got this as a big picture here.
Yeah. So this is the big thing that we were talking about, right? You can see the mallard, the percent change from 2022 alone is 18% down. And your percent change from the long-term average is 23% down. So this is what we were talking about there. In 2017, back to what I said, and I'm not going to go on Instagram and pull it up because that's the only place I could find it still posted. Thankfully, I had it on my Instagram. We were at 10.5 million mallards. So from 2017 to 2023, we've dropped 4.4 million birds. And that's 23% down from the long-term average. Again, and this is the lowest that the mallard population has been since 1983. And we were tied for the same number there, basically. So the gadwall is down 5% this year and 25% up from the long-term average. And it's interesting to hear this because one of those stories my great uncle used to tell us about duck hunting in Arkansas, there was a lake there. And we used to always get told that you couldn't back your boat in the ramp to go out and hunt without hitting a gadwall. So it's interesting to see that, they're claiming numbers up 25% change from the long-term average, when I think the gadwall overall, from where we've hunted public land, both here and out west, the gadwall has been one of those birds we're seeing less and less of. The American widgeon is down 14% from 2022 and down 28% from the long-term average. The widgeon is another one that kind of shares a flight path with gadwall. So if anybody else that doesn't know this, with these ducks that imprint on the prairie pothole region, the gadwall is very good about, as they're flying over the prairie pothole region, they're literally doing a scan to see if this fits their criteria. And if it doesn't, the gadwall will fly over the prairie pothole region and go straight into the boreal forests to nest and breed. And the widgeon does the same thing. So it's crazy to think that on the dry years where they would, because that's the big claim from a lot of these biologists right now, is that it was so dry, it was hard to get these birds back up there. And the year before they weren't producing. It's hard to think that, these birds would be captured in the survey when they will do the same thing as the gadwall and overshoot the prairie pothole region. So it's just another thing with posting numbers like this is it 100% accurate? There's no way to tell. The green-winged teal, they're showing it's up 16% from 2022. And, just anecdotal evidence, which is all the experience I have hunting both here and out west, I can let this be a testament to that. I believe that to be true. I'm seeing a lot more green-winged teal. There were days out last year we went to Kansas. It was nothing but a green-winged teal shoot and, teal coming in by the hundreds. So,
yeah, and I agree with you on the teal, because we saw a bunch of green wings last year in a place that generally doesn't get them, and in waters that you would not think you would see teal in, and they were everywhere. So yeah, I agree with you on that, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean the teal, that's the best eating there is. So the more the merrier there. But the blue wing is another really interesting one because roughly 85% of all North American blue wing population actually breeds in North Dakota. And the blue wing teal last year was the one that got they saw a crazy spike in numbers. And then immediately, this following year when North Dakota actually had its 7th wettest year on record. Its 7th wettest. It wasn't the best, but it was by far not the worst. And we see such a drastic decline. The northern shoveler is down. Old bootbill, northern pintail. This is the one that, if you think about this, if you feed into what everybody's saying about it being a big drought up there, right? And what surprises me with a lot of these biologists is they were surprised by the pintail, at least everything I've read and what's been streamed so far. But it makes sense because the pintail actually nests in a lot of the grasses. That's why the CRP reduction was such a big impact to the pintail. So if it's a drier year up there and those ephemeral wetlands don't have as much water and you have a lot of native vegetation exposed, it makes sense that the pintail have a greater landscape to breed and nest across. So it makes sense that the pintail would be a little bit higher than they expected, but 24% is insane.
Right.
And if anybody pays attention, the redhead, the canvasback, throughout all studies, it's very rare for these numbers to go up past 1 million. But they do. The redhead's sitting at 930,000 and the canvasback at 600,000. These are probably two of the most hardy species that we have. And these numbers might look bad with the 13% down from last year and only 6% up from the canvasback. But these numbers really don't change across any of your studies. This has just been basically what the North American holding capacity is for these two species year in and year out, for these birds to hover around that $700,000 to $900,000 or $700,000 to $900,000 bird.
Yeah.
700 to 900,000 birds.
Yeah. Not dollar, but birds.
Yeah. And the scop is probably the most interesting one, right? Because we've been how many 6, 7 seasons deep now of only having one scop.
Right.
One bluebill to the limit, and it's doing nothing but going downhill. And you can look at these numbers, and I say all of this, and I think the most important thing for everybody to ask and pay attention to is start talking to all your friends across the country, because it's a very real possibility that these birds just aren't making it back up north to breed. And that can be because they're being harvested. Again, one of the numbers I shared with you is that in North America alone, so the U.S. hunter harvested 2.54 million mallards alone last year. But then at the same time, you talk to everybody in the States, and people in Texas are holding blue-winged teal year-round. They're holding mallards year-round. We're holding mallards year-round. I remember a video I got from actually my dad early this year, after the season had already let out. And we've got industrial ponds just slam full of teal and goldeneye. And it's insane to think. So there are studies out there that, are claiming, reputable studies out of the University of Wisconsin that are claiming that a lot of these birds just simply aren't migrating anymore. And that's because they have everything they need between, the private lands that are keeping water across some of their fields, the suburban pond where they're not getting harvested or pressure, the industrial, drainage ponds that they're not getting any pressure on. So that's another theory there. And it kind of just leaves two trains of thought. Like I said, you're either over harvesting these birds or they're not migrating.
And I have said this again. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Ducks need 3 things. They need food, they need water, they need rest. That's what they need. And if they've got all 3 of those, they have no reason to migrate up or down or east or west. I know a lot of the mallards that, especially in our state, and I'm going to kind of talk a lot about mallards because the mallard that's the king, and that's what sells hunting stuff. You're not going to buy decoys to go shoot wood ducks. Most people, unless you're really into wood duck hunting like I am, with calls and decoys and jerk strings and whatnot, and can actually put them on the water. You're not going to do it. Your diver hunters will continue to buy lots of decoys, but the mallard, your puddle duck hunters, the first thing they're going to get is mallard decoys, because everything goes to a mallard decoy. So everything is geared around it. Your hunting clothes, your guns, your shells, everything is surrounded by the mallard. So here, and I believe you said it was your dad that was seeing a lot of ducks after the season. Well, these private lands they'll start drawing water out. Not all of them, but some of them will start drawing water out as soon as the season ends. So where do these ducks go? They're going to go to the closest water. I can take you down to Santee. Give me 2, maybe 3 weeks after the season, and put you in a spot, and you will see thousands and thousands of ducks. Craig, who is now in our chat now, he can attest to that. He came down, and ducks were everywhere. The ducks were absolutely everywhere, and that's because there was no water on the impounds, where they have food, water, and rest. Once they start drawing down, I mean, let's face it, ducks have a calendar in their head. They know when the season's over, and they're going to hit these. They're going to hit these other spots. So yeah, I think we have a lot of residential birds is what I'm getting at. And now I don't know much about divers as far as their habits. I know what to kind of look for when I'm hunting for divers, but could they also be starting to be residential and not migrating back north to the prairie pothole region or even to the boreal forest? Could they just be finding other spots now that they don't have to go expend all that energy to have a brood?
Yeah, and I think that's probably 50-60% of why these numbers are looking the way they are, is these birds just simply aren't migrating because they don't have to. I mean, we've all called them dock mallards, right? And we all see these birds and geese around these ponds that you drive by in the neighborhoods, or you can drive through ditches and see a ton of bufflehead just stacked in there. And it's because they have everything they need right there, and they're not pressured. There's no reason to migrate. And a lot of people, especially on the scientific community side, those guys like to point to the temperature change. It's not getting cold enough for these birds to have to migrate. And I don't put really much any stock of that at all. I think, birds are on an ecological clock, right? So they know, and it used to be a lot of relation. People would say it was that first full moon in October, and that's what would start the migration out west. And it wasn't so much the cold; it's just some of those birds had that internal clock going on. And
photoperiod ducks.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot to do with they have everything they need locally. And it's interesting. A lot of these clubs, they will draw immediately after season. They'll take the water off of their blinds, but good management practice calls for everyone to have essentially a lay down yard for these birds, right? There's always a rest area on your land, not just where you're going to shoot at. You're going to put water across that, but there's always a rest area on your private land as well. And they put telemetry on a bird on mallards. And if anybody's familiar with the Coca-Cola woods out on the Mississippi River, Rusty Creasy, those guys, his woods. So they put telemetry on a couple mallards, and they had mallards stay in the Coca-Cola woods for an entire year. Did not leave. Just stayed in the Coca-Cola woods.
They got everything they want.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that weather. Duck hunters are the ones that need weather, and I don't think weather pushes ducks like a lot of people think they do. Yeah, it will push some, but not to the extent, because I remember in the late 70s, in the very early 80s, where we would have 70, 80 degree days during duck season, and we would still have big ducks in the swamp. And this was way before the impounds got really big. The impounds didn't start getting big until about the mid 80s. But before then, and even during my dad's time, he told stories of ducks. It'd be warm. You'd be shooting ducks in short sleeve, be shooting mallards. And, because they're photoperiod birds. I mean, that's what they are, and they're going to move on that. But we still had ducks. Now, it's kind of almost reversed. To even get ducks to move, the only way they're going to move is if it completely locks up. I mean, everything above you completely locks up, and you're the only one that's got open water. And now with the thrashers and the trolling motor gizmos that keep water moving, the ice breakers, the ice eaters and whatnot, all of this stuff is now keeping water open and open and open. People planting corn and then flooding a corn, which I can never figure out because that's, it's not a normal agricultural practice. But even if it did lock up, that corn's going to be above the frozen water. And ducks can still get to that food source. And what is it for a duck to fly 50 miles south to get water? That's nothing. That's a 10-minute flight. If that. If they get on the wind, they're gone. And they can go get water, rest, and come back the next day and sit on top of the ice and eat corn.
Exactly. And it's just even just staying local, right? That same train of thought. You flood your corn, it gets iced over, they can still harvest it. If they need fresh water, your divers, you're going to go out to your coastal bays and your sounds where the water's not going to get locked up. They're going to have all the food they need. Your mallards can go rest on a river where that running water is not going to freeze over, and they'll be right back to feed the next day.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just want to hear your theory. Make it as quick or as long as you want. On your reasoning or what you think is why we went from 2 mallards on the Atlantic Flyway back up to 4 mallards. What? And I mean, I don't. The floor's open, so
yeah. So it's definitely a combination. So what I said with Dr. Phil Levetsky out of UTEP, I feel like a lot of these biologists with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and DU, because DU doesn't fly these flights and put out these numbers. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does, but DU definitely screens it, and they're the one that publicizes it. But a lot of those guys were putting stock into that theory that the mallard was going to keep declining because of, the bad genetics it had from the game mallards. And you put that with a declining population and kind of this overpopulation and this human imprint with light pollution and everything going on there, it was getting harder and harder to harvest these mallards. So with the little bit of study they had going on with Dr. Levetsky's stuff and everything with the mass urbanization and the buildup that is the East Coast, I felt like they did what they thought they had to do or what the right thing to do was. But when that study comes back out and they said, well, actually, this really isn't impacting the mallards. So what's the real issue? And you couple that with a bunch of these Northern Atlantic Flyway guys that are actually harvesting a fair number of mallards. So like even Pennsylvania, 74% of their bags are mallards. And, and out of that 74%, 70% of those mallards were hatched in Pennsylvania. So there's still mallards across the landscape. They don't have an excuse as to why they can restrict this bag limit anymore, especially in the Atlantic Flyway, because the Eastern survey is actually done by itself. They do a breakout of the Eastern survey. But there's no reason to be able to tell us that we can only harvest 2 or we can harvest 4. Those numbers really do contradict each other. That's why everybody gets confused on them. And then also you've got a bunch of guys complaining about the limit. I know guys that didn't even buy local home state hunting license or stamps 2 seasons in a row just because they couldn't harvest more than 2 mallards.
Right.
And, you see those numbers and that big decline and that dollar sign starts to drop and nobody's, like you said, is buying the decoys. Nobody's buying the licenses. That's what drives it. It's the dollar sign behind it.
That dollar, that mighty dollar, and what gets me is South Carolina is just not. I don't know if they haven't figured it out or it just hasn't impacted them. But if they would just they got our money, and they've spent millions of dollars and haven't done anything. And if everybody just stood up and said, you know what, I'm not buying a license this year. I'm not going to hunt ducks in South Carolina this year. I'm not going to get a state stamp this year. What are they going to do? I mean, or do they even care? I mean, that's the whole thing. Now, I'm quite sure there are some within the DNR that do care, immensely about it, but it just seems like there's some people in there that just don't even care if we duck hunt again. I mean, because when you go duck hunting, you're leaving the house 2:30 in the morning. Where's the first place you go? You stop off at the Circle K.
Mm-hmm.
Or depending on where you're at, down where you're at, it's going to be Parker's. And you're going to get gas. You're going to get drinks. You're going to get snacks. You're going to get that terrible Parker's sausage biscuit. And you're gonna leave. You're spending money. When you finish duck hunting that day, if you don't eat in the blind, like I do a lot of times, I do a lot of cooking when I'm in the blind. When you come out, you're going to stop off at a mom and pop. Generally, going to stop off at a mom and pop and get your burger. You're spending money. You're helping the economy. And by promoting more waterfowl, I mean, we used to have presidents of the United States who would leave Washington, D.C. and come to South Carolina and hunt ducks. I mean, they would come here to hunt ducks. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. They were coming 3, 4, 5 times a year because we had such great duck hunting here. And it just seems like there's people that are in those positions just don't care anymore. I hate to put a rant on it, but I mean, I'm just.
No, I agree with you 100%. They don't care because it's not you and me in these positions, right? It's not your duck hunter. It's not your good old boy that enjoys the outdoor in the positions to make these decisions. And in my opinion, I love our community. I love everybody that hunts. We share a common ground.
Right.
But we've got to do a better job about telling our kids that they need to go to school and they need to be wildlife biologists, or we need to make sure that our kids are going out to Washington and we've got our reps that are sticking up for what we like to do, our pastime, what we enjoy about this. They're out there filling positions. It's a bit of a stigma, and this gets on the political side. It's a collaboration of what all these problems are. And, we've got to do our part about making sure we're in a position to make changes as well. So that involves you're not trying to push a trade on your son, but letting him go to school to be a biologist so he can be in a position to make a difference. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. You've got some of these wildlife biologists and land managers in DNR at the ground level, that the ones that are actually getting their boots wet, that are putting waders on and going out there and cleaning beaver huts up and, fixing water control structures. But the guys making the decisions, your chairman of South Carolina DNR, your chairman and your vice chairman are both real estate moguls.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? One of them runs one of the biggest construction companies inland in South Carolina. You got to think about stuff like this. We don't have the guys that have our best interests at heart in the right positions. And,
right.
That's a big kind of conspiracy theory rant, but the proof is there.
Yeah. And, let's see here. Real quick, Tina. Hey, Tina. I said PA Trapping's in the house. Smoking Barrels Outdoors is in the house. Salt Creek Custom Ammunition's in the house. Glad y'all could make it. Again, just another little thing. If you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up button for me. It sure helps the algorithm and helps me out a lot. And I think Keith is right from Salt Creek Custom. Bureaucrats are making the laws, not the outdoorsmen. 100%. I'm in the same boat. Listen, man, I think me and you are like right there together. You may say it a little more eloquently than I do. I'm old and gruff, and it just whatever comes out, comes out. But I just don't think they've got it in their heart to care about the waterfowler, or even the outdoorsman in general. I mean, you look at trapping, which I think has a huge impact on waterfowl. The trappers that are out there are they're not getting any money anymore for fur, and so a lot of them have quit. Some are doing it just as because they enjoy doing it, and that's it. They can't make any money on it anymore, so they release some non-desirables. Keep the betters, but yet the non-desirables is what's eating eggs. And I love my trappers. I got several of them who are in here tonight, who are trappers. Mark J. Larson is one of them. I call him the king of the coyote killers. That man, I think he caught like 30 some odd coyotes in one season. He's awesome at what he does. Anti, I didn't see you, bro. I'm sorry, man. I'm glad you don't get butthurt either, man. I really am. So I see, I just see people that are in those positions that would, like you said, would rather sell the real estate and build a condo than have places for the public hunter, and just the public hunter in general. It's funny though. They do take care of the dove fields. Why can't they take, they are taking care of dove fields. Why can't they take care of waterfowl impoundments and fix our dikes?
Right. It's, we could speculate around that, but wetlands are way more work. Wetlands are way more work than a dove field.
There's no I have no problem going down that rabbit hole. I'll jump slap down in it.
But I mean, dove fields are way easier than wetlands, and I love to dove hunt too. But the guy that wakes up itching to dove hunt and thinks about that all year is not the same guy that's ready to walk in the swamp in 15-degree weather. I mean, we might do it here and there, and we might do it to get ready for duck season, but I don't know. I think dove hunting is a little more accessible. And appeals to a different crowd than duck hunting does. And that's probably why it gets back to the squeaky wheel, getting the grease. And it's just,
right.
Like I said, we've got to start. And that's kind of what I was hoping to do when I posted the video about the duck numbers, right? We've got to unite as a public, not only in South Carolina, but in the country as a whole. And we've got to start being that squeaky wheel, and we've got to start asking the hard questions and poking the bear. And, that comes from us all being on the same page.
And actually saying the things that nobody wants to hear.
Exactly.
Just say it. Man, I wish I could remember the guy's name that did that video that all of a sudden got posted all over the internet about our cat ones. I'm quite sure you've seen that video. It just all of a sudden it was just popped up on the internet. How terrible our cat ones and cat twos are in our state. And, it's guys like him that, he's at these meetings, he's at the waterfowl meetings, and he keeps telling them the same thing over and over. Y'all are fixing to lose a huge economic resource if you keep playing around and not fixing these waterfowl impoundments. I mean, you got places, like you said earlier, that 100% of the kill was zero. They didn't shoot anything on them.
Yep.
100%. They didn't have a duck on their impounds. So.
Yeah, pretty soon duck hunting in South Carolina is just going to be a bunch of kids with mud motors running around and just cutting up to have fun and not killing anything.
Yeah,
it's I think you, in one of the videos you had that I was watching, I believe you kind of speculated against it. Is you said you asked the question, is waterfowl hunting savable in South Carolina? Is it mendable? can we do anything to change this, or is it done? And as much as it hurts to say, I think all signs point to duck hunting in South Carolina in a decade. It's going to be non-existent. It's going to be a thing of a past. The podcast will be about telling stories. You'll be doing live sessions and we'll be telling the stories about some of our favorite duck hunts that we ever went on. And
right.
There'll be a lot of duck boats up for sale on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh yeah. I mean, and well, you brought it up about the mud motors. I own a mud motor. I think they're a great tool. I believe you have one.
Yeah.
But you will find people cutting through the swamp at prime time, prime times to be killing ducks, and they're blaring music and running their mud motors because they're bored and they think it's cool and they don't care about other people.
Yeah. So it's that they don't care about other people, but to be a young boy, like we were talking about this when we spoke on the phone, right? You can think back to, when there were ducks in the woods and you weren't thinking about anything because you were able to harvest those birds. But these guys, like all of us, are guilty of it. Every duck hunter, I know a couple nights before the season opens, I have a hard time sleeping. I get excited for it. August the 1st rolls around and, I might think about climbing in the bow stand every now and then. But, August 1st rolls around and I'm worried about what duck hunting is going to be like. And do I need to get the decoys shaken out and cleaned up? Is it time to spray the boat off and, fire up, get the oil changed?
Right.
And, these kids are out here. They come out here all fired up to hunt these birds and, post the pile pictures, which that's another rabbit hole that we could spend 4 hours on. The kind of story that is duck hunting that is posted across all of social media now. It's just pile pictures, and these boys don't have that around here. So what are they going to do? They're going to play around on their mud boat. They're going to have some fun.
Duck. They're going to take a wood duck. They're going to shove its bill down the end of a barrel, and that's it.
Yep, that's it.
That's what they're going to post.
Yep, take a picture and then go cut some donuts in the mud flats.
Yeah, exactly. They have no clue to actually how to duck hunt and what's involved. They just they go out and they throw their stuff out, and they don't pull the trigger in 15 minutes. They're gone, and they're out cutting around and trying to, they say they're scouting, and actually, in all actuality, they should have been doing that a long time ago.
Yeah. But again, it's a product of the time, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying about, what I kind of wanted to do with this platform. I'm trying to build up in the community and, just get back to where we're all hunters again. We're all on the same page, and it's not just about posting the pile picture. It's about being out there with your buddies and cutting up and having some laughs and watching some people fall over in the decoys or having to pull their waders down when they realize they forgot toilet paper back at the house, and being able to share stories and stuff like that. And the birds on top of it, it's a great bonus to have, and everybody wants to kill the birds. Trust me, I like the way jalapeno poppers taste too with duck breasts, but the number of birds you have, especially in South Carolina, that's not the whole story.
Correct. Yeah. All right. So, oh man, I mean, we've gone over some numbers. We've talked about some numbers, and we've talked just a little bit about the issues. And I know we're staying in South Carolina, guys, because that's where both of us are from. And it's kind of dear and close to our hearts. I mean, this year will be my 51st duck season, and I have no high expectations in our state this year. None whatsoever. I'm actually, kind of down about it. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to go, because I am going to go. I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to hunt somewhere. But I just don't have any high expectations this year like I normally have. And I don't know if that's part of just getting older, or if that's just all of a sudden having the realization that the duck hunting in our state just absolutely 100% sucks compared to what I used to know, back in the day. I mean,
Yeah, it's just I'd venture to say, of course, I'm not you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think it has anything to do with getting old. Every duck hunter, that's a fire that's in us probably till the day we go.
Right.
It's just the fact that the birds aren't here, and you can't get excited for it because it's hard to even see a wood duck. I mean, I live on the rice fields, and even just 6 years ago, you could take your boat out here in the middle of July, and there were 1,000 coots, and there were ducks mixed in with these coots, and we don't even have coots anymore.
Right.
It hurts to say, but that's just the truth. Which thankfully for me, and my core group, my dad, all of us, my friends, that we go out west, and that's where we spend the majority of our season. That's what we get excited for. But
yep,
and that's kind of what got us on the horn today. Is you look at the numbers, right? The numbers that we looked at, that's mostly pertaining to the west. And when those numbers start to drop, and it's pretty soon going to be the same picture. We're just not going to have anywhere to go. We'll all be struggling to get some birds in the boat.
Now, I don't know how true this is, but I heard of it I believe today, that like how Arkansas has days where non-residents can't hunt. I heard Kansas is considering that, or they're either doing it this year. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I believe it was August the 8th. Here, I actually have it on my calendar. Yeah, it was August the 8th. They took their second vote on it, and it passed unanimously. Hunters in Kansas, out-of-state non-resident hunters in Kansas, they will only be able to hunt Sunday, Monday, and Tuesdays throughout the season. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, those are going to be resident only, or if you can happen to find some private land to hunt in Kansas. But if you're hunting public land, which is what we do when we go out west, you're going to be restricted to 3 days a week.
All right, well, we got a question here that just popped up. It's one of the first ones that I've seen. The Greenhead Father, first of all, don't know who you are. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. I hope you subscribe to both of us tonight. But he asked, why do y'all think South Carolina numbers are so down? And I will let you go. I think we've kind of answered this a couple times, but we'll do it again. I'll let you go first, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah, so a little bit of it definitely, as we've already said, Greenhead Father, is the population isn't what it used to be. Now, I'm not saying that to say that we don't have ducks in the Atlantic Flyway at all, but the Atlantic Flyway population and ducks overall obviously just aren't where they used to be. Now, the big thing that keeps birds away from South Carolina, number one, is just, I will always say it, it's going to be the light pollution. It's going to be the fact that there's so much going on in South Carolina anymore. We really get overshot. And the couples with that, when you couple the light pollution and the mass buildup of everything, you couple that with the fact that we don't have any strong wintering grounds on public land per se anymore. That's the other reason. The birds don't have a reason to stay here. And if these private land guys are still having great success. And like I said, they do release some clip toes every now and then, but I know most of the guys in these places, they pass the clip toes and they will shoot limits of ringnecks and green wing teal day in and day out. And that's because they're managing these lands correctly. They've got the food, they've got the protection, the cover, they've got the rest areas, and water ultimately, which is what kind of drives holding capacity of a landscape for ducks versus what it normally would with a whitetail. That's what's important, and we don't have that on public lands. So the little bit of birds we do have, they're getting gobbled up on private lands, and the rest of them are overshooting down to Florida. Or they're not coming down at all.
And I'll just kind of mirror what Jonathan said. Greenhead Father, I'm not exactly sure where you're from. If you want to post that up and let us know where you're from, that'd be great. But here in South Carolina, our wintering grounds, for the most part, was the Santee Cooper lakes, the Lake Marion, Lake Moultrie area. That was our greatest ever wintering grounds. Before hydrilla came to the lakes, we had huge amounts of acorn trees that were up in our swamps. And, it was just huge. There was acorns everywhere. We had the refuges were planted and flooded for years. The mallard population started going down I would say in the late 80s, about the early to mid 80s, and these private ponds started coming in. Well, at the same time, we had hydrilla. You're from Louisiana, Hunt, Arkansas, private. Gotcha. At the same time, hydrilla was introduced into our lakes. Well, then we started seeing other ducks. We started seeing en masse a lot of gadwall, widgeon, ringnecks, bluebills, redheads, canvasbacks, huge flocks of coots. Which all, if you got a good coot population, you're going to get ducks because ducks are going to want to compete with those coots. So you'd get a lot of other ducks, lots of teal, just everything. Geese were abundant. Then the Santee Cooper, when I say Santee Cooper, that's the electric co-op. Hydrilla got so bad that they said, okay, we got to start reducing it, the hydrilla on the lakes, because it's fouling up the turbines for produce electricity. Some of the landowners, the house owners on the lake, were complaining that the grass was tickling their feet when they went swimming and they didn't like it, so forth and so forth. So they introduced a grass-eating carp, and they just introduced thousands upon thousands upon thousands, which ate up all of our grass in our lake. As in any lake, the acorn tree started to die back because it's not controlled flooding. It's a swamp. It stays flooded. So the acorn tree started dying back. Hydrilla, the grass is gone off the lakes, and more private impounds started being built around the lake. And like I said, I'm mirroring what Jonathan said on some of the things, but that is one of the biggest reasons why we just don't see the numbers as we used to. You have now impounds. I've had people argue with me, said that, well, I'm not going to worry about a 2-acre impound. That's, you have to understand, and there's one section of our lake, as a crow flies, is probably no more than 10 miles, but there's well over 200 corn ponds in that section. Then you couple that with impounds that are complete all over the state, not just near the lake, but all over the state. There are corn ponds in the middle of fields that you would have never seen ducks before until they started making these impounds. So we're getting the duck. We're seeing ducks here, but they're hitting these private impounds, and they're staying there because they are being managed correctly. They have food, they have water, they have rest. They get shot, once a week, sometimes twice a week. Some of these impounds and some of these locations, they shoot it once or twice a year. That's it. So the ducks are here. I mean, don't get me wrong. We still have ducks. He's just not seeing them on the public access and on the public waters. Our Cat 1s, which is the lottery hunts, are not being maintained. Our Cat 2s have never been maintained. And then you've got the public duck hunter on public open that are running their boats constantly. Fishermen are running, they're scaring up ducks, they're moving ducks around. They're pushing them out of the traditional areas and into backwater where you either just can't get to or can't find them, or pushing them back onto private land. I hope that kind of answered your question. I could go on for about 2 more hours on that topic and never skip a breath. I'm gonna tell you something, man. If it wasn't for sweet tea, I don't know if I could make it in life.
I've been scared off of sweet tea for a little while now. My pawpaw told me not long before he passed, sweet tea is what causes kidney stones, and I think that's my number one fear in life right now.
Oh, I've had them. So you're just gonna drink moonshine, right?
Yeah, no, I drink everything out of a. I drink everything out of a glass like that.
Sky blasting in public, yes, that doesn't happen to anyone else. Oh yeah, sky blasting, that's everywhere, Grant. That's everywhere. But yeah, let's see. Was there any more? If you had a question and I missed it, guys, I'm sorry. Please say it. Type it in again if you don't mind. Um, I'm kind of in this conversation with Jonathan, so I'm trying to pay attention to the chat, but and catching a few things. Green Father, you're welcome. And I've hunted in Louisiana as well. I used to hunt there quite often. I saw a change there as well. Generally from the northern state north of Louisiana, especially out of Missouri, with the huge corn impoundments that are up that way. And I think there is a change in migration. I did a video many years ago on that, sitting on a tree stump in the middle of Santee, and talked about that. And but we've always had what they call crossover birds that fly, from east to west, west to east. We get some birds from British Columbia. We get a lot of birds from Pennsylvania. I killed a mallard on Santee that had a Saskatchewan band on it. So we do get crossovers, but I do think there's a more of a shift westward on ducks. And I never really thought about it until Jonathan said something earlier, and that's just light pollution. It just, for those of y'all in South Carolina, you can go back 10 years or even less, and you could drive Highway 17 and pretty much be in the country the minute you left Savannah, headed north. Then you run into Beaufort, and you get into a little bit of light, and then you're back out into the country, and then you could run it all the way up to Charleston until you got to Charlestown, and then you go, definitely getting light. But it seems like as soon as you come out of Allendale and McClellanville, from Georgetown all the way up to the North Carolina coast, you can see the road clear because it's all lit up. Everything's lit up. And that may have an impact on why we're not seeing ducks. I believe you said there was some studies done on that as well.
Yes, sir. There's been a bunch of studies on that. And the oldest ones that I can remember back to are 02 and 03. Those came out of Wisconsin as well. And it was the University of Wisconsin. And the theory is that the birds were jumping and they were going straight to Florida. So they were just passing over South Carolina, Savannah, parts of Georgia, and they were going all the way to South Florida down to the Glades, and just bypassing wherever the light was at. And, a lot of that was proven to be moderately accurate with what they could do back in 02 and 03. And it's just, there hasn't been anything else I've read on it lately, at least in great detail. It's been mentioned in some of the other studies that's been done about birds actually, they call it semi-migrating, and they're moving east to west versus north to south. So they're going more from like Nebraska over to Utah and then back across to southern Missouri, or, Wisconsin, across to Minnesota, across to North Dakota, versus all the way from Canada or North Dakota down south to Louisiana. But other than that, there's not been many other studies on it, but it's one of the biggest reasons I can see, because I don't even see, especially on the coast. So I used to hunt the saltwater coastal here in the Charleston area very heavily. It's where I killed my first band. Even all the times I went to Arkansas and Mississippi, but I used to hunt the coast here really heavy, and the birds don't even use it anymore.
Right.
And I'd kill everything. I've killed canvasback here. I've killed longtail ducks, scoters, buffleheads, bluebill, redhead. I've killed them all on the coastal waters here in South Carolina, and you don't see them there anymore. And it's because there's a house on every 1/8 of an acre.
Right. Yeah, it is everything. It's population of humans. It's the same thing you go on the lakes. You go from where you're at, you're down at the lower lake. You can Is that you typing that in there?
No. So that's that's my dad.
Oh, that's your dad. Okay, hey, Dad.
Yeah. He's got a really cool theory about the population changing as well. We've been talking about it for about 10 years now.
All right, hang on. Do you feel Carolina? Hold on, my fingers ain't working. John. Okay, do you feel CWS? I think you're talking about Carolina Wildlife Syndicate is making a significant step for duck hunters or more for deer. Okay, I've had a lot of conversations with dadgummit. I hate it when people's names jump out of my head. David Strickland.
Yep.
I've had a lot of conversations with him in the past. Not so many recently. I think our work schedules have just been messed up. It is the CWS is very season oriented. They do a lot for ducks throughout the year, a lot for deer, a lot for forestry control, burning turkeys, so forth. But it's seasonal. So usually right before the duck season, you'll see a lot of input from them on that. And then right after the duck season. I think that they are doing I think they're doing a fine job. I think they're doing the best that they can in addressing these issues. David is a very avid waterfowler, but he's an avid outdoorsman, period. But he's a very avid waterfowler, and I think that he's doing all he can, and I think the community are doing all they can. I mean, you got guys that are, that are doing their own thing as far as wood duck boxes and little small places that are trying to set aside to do waterfowl management at. So I think they do it, but it's very seasonal. Here a while back they were talking about the wolves. They spent a lot of time talking about the reintroduction of wolves into our state, which I personally think is a bad idea, but that's just me. So right now I think it's going to be on deer here in a couple of weeks. Once teal season gets here, they're going to be talking a lot more about ducks. And then right before usually the big waterfowl meeting, which is usually held in the spring, they'll jump right back on the waterfowl and get hot and heavy on it. I can't see that organization, and I'm a member, and I fully support everything they do, but they can't do everything all at once. That's just it almost like it needs to be broken up into subcommittees. And a group of waterfowlers do this, a group of deer hunters do that, turkey hunters do that. I think they're doing the best they can. Long answer, what a short. It should have been shorter, but anyway. All right. What else? All right. Well, anything else you want to add? We're just going to get in some more. If you got something you want to add on the waterfowl season this year, what are your expectations?
So I get really into the science of the weather as well. I think we're in for a cold year. I don't know if that's going to influence any kind of duck numbers anytime soon. So I don't have any kind of big crazy hopes for this season locally, if I'm being honest. And for out west right now, everything looks good, but I've also got some concerns out there for water levels. And if those guys don't get rain, it's a El Nino year, so a lot of those kind of mid-latitude to northern Mississippi states are going to end up drying up, if I'm not mistaken. And I just hope I hope we're able to get something shaken out here or where we go out west. I think for South Carolina, I mean, people just be ready to shoot as many wood ducks as you can, but I think that's about it.
Hey, there's nothing better than I don't know if you've seen the video I did on wood duck shotgun shells. That is the best meal you will ever fix when it comes to ducks. Oh my Lord, that stuff's outstanding, dude. Make you slap your brain with your tongue. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this season. In some of the other states that I'm going to, primarily, I'll be hitting North Carolina a lot this year. I got good. Right now, I'm seeing, I got good reports on water right now. I mean, I got one friend of mine. He's doing his best to keep water out right now, so he can get his stuff grown. But I'm seeing good reports there. Yeah, I did see the weather reports, and hopefully it will. I just don't think it's going to freeze up enough to make an impact on weather ducks. I think your impact is going to be on your photo period flights. But I think we're going to see a lot more up north of us. Here, we just don't have the food. We just don't have the food. Even if it locked up at the North Carolina, South Carolina, I mean, if we had that perfect storm that they had that movie The Day After or whatever, even if it just froze solid to the north South Carolina border, we ain't got the food to sustain ducks.
No.
We just don't have food. So yeah. I think they're gonna. Let's see. Andy from Smoking Barrel said we'll spend more time out of state than here at home. Your dad says he's with you. Got it. That's just what I see, because we just don't have the food. If we had more food, if we had a lot more food, Christmas 1989, Lord, oh, Charles, you just brought back a lot of memories, dude. I mean, I was using fishing nets to catch ducks. That's how thick it was.
Oh man!
You could stick a net in there, a fish net. Whoop, it was absolutely nuts.
You have to save that story for when you come on the podcast, because that's the kind of stuff I want these young guys to hear.
Oh, dude, it was absolutely crazy. But yeah, I just don't see. We just don't have the food, man. And Georgia is the same way. Georgia just doesn't have the food, and where the mallards, as far as the mallards go, they're going to stop here. They're going to stop at South Carolina, but they're going to be on private property. The majority of them, the bulk of them. Florida will see all the teal and the widgeon and the pintails and the those ducks and the ringnecks. I mean, they always do, and because they got plenty of food. They got plenty of water, plenty of food, plenty of area, plenty of rest. 2 degrees for a low that year. Yeah, I know. I remember. And that was before. Yeah, we had Gore-Tex then, but not everybody owned it. I looked like the Michelin tire boy walking through the swamp that day.
Y'all were still in the old canvas back then.
Oh man, I think I still had rubber waders.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, his brother almost. Let's see. Keith from Salt Creek is saying my brother almost died chasing a full plume Drake cinnamon teal. That's one of my dream birds too, John. Cinnamon teal, a furbalist tree duck, and a black belly whistling duck.
Yeah, so I'm gonna head out to actually after the new year when we get back, I'm gonna head down to hunt with SoFlo and try to get on the fulvus.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
We might be hunting together.
We might be. We were getting the podcast lined up, and then he offered it to me earlier today, and I was like, well, let's get it lined up. Why not? So I've shot a few of the black-bellied whistlers around here, but I haven't been on a fulvus yet. So
I have not shot one yet. Every time it seems like I would go, they moved. It was like they knew I was coming.
Yeah.
Or they show up when the season ain't in around here. I want one bad, but I'm going to be chasing. Hopefully, I put in for a swan permit this year, so for North Carolina, so I'm going to be chasing that.
There you go.
Pretty hot and heavy. All right, what else? What else you got, man? You got anything? We got about 25 minutes. We need to round it up.
Oh, let's see. What do we want to touch on? If there's anything else, I'd like what can we do?
We'll take more questions from the chat room. So y'all got something? Well, Charles, if we couldn't shoot lead, I think I was shooting lead. I can't remember what year we had to stop.
Whatever was legal, that's what you were shooting, right?
I don't even remember if it was lead. I mean, I remember the first year I remember shooting steel or required to shoot steel. Nobody could find it. We didn't even have it in the stores. We just didn't care.
Yeah, it was about like that a couple of years ago. I didn't think anybody was going to get a hold of any steel shot. If you weren't stocked up, you were out of luck.
All right, well, let's talk about that. Let my chat kind of get to know you more about it as far as your duck hunting. What's your rig? What's your boat rig?
So actually, right now, I've got it is a 1542 Express. It's got a 23 mini on it with stage 3 kit. So it's got the heads, the exhaust and everything. And that's what I'm running. I bought a brand new Havoc back in 2017 with the 40 anniversary when it first came out here at Cooper River Marine. And I don't know what everybody loves about those Havocs. I couldn't stand it. So I got rid of it. And I've got this one. I had a boat project that I was doing, and I was actually going to put a longtail on this one. It would be my first longtail. But the boat I bought off a marketplace, it turns out it had some bad electrolysis damage all across the bottom. So I took it to the fabricator. He was going to get it laid out the way I wanted it. And then he found the electrolysis damage. So I scrapped the boat and I had to go buy that Express.
Okay.
So that's what I'm in now. Other than that, let's see. Before then, I actually bought a weld built back in 2017. I got back from Iraq. I bought a brand new weld built. I put a brand new Mud Buddy on it, and it was a 1448. And that boat never got stuck anywhere. It was literally a tin can with a mud motor on it, and it was lovely. But I just started hunting more and more people, and I had to get a bigger boat. So I went to the Havoc. I hated that, and now I'm back down to the Express.
Okay. Let me ask.
Never own.
Your dad asked another question. I'm quite sure this is to me, since he probably talks to you about this stuff every day. Do you think all across the country should go to shorter seasons? Oh, that's a tough one for me. Being that my love for duck hunting is so big that I want to hunt as many days as I can. I think for the average person, the average duck hunter with a full-time job is only hunting, Saturday and Sunday with maybe a few trips that are lined up throughout the year. So conservative-wise, as in conservation, yes, in the way our duck numbers are, I think we should go to shorter seasons and a lowered bag limit. But with that said, I know this sounds like I'm riding the fence. You get on one side or the other, boys. I understand that. I think the average duck hunter, hunts weekends, and to shorten that season would keep a lot of people in the long run from duck hunting where we need that monies, those license fees. Economically, I don't. Conservation wise, I think it's a great idea. Economically wise, I do not. I do not think it's a good idea. I know that sounds like I'm riding the fence. I know that makes me sound like a politician, but it's just a fact of life. Without duck hunters and without the monies from licenses and stamp sales, the Pittman Robinson Act, without getting those tax money from shells, decoys, waiters, jackets, boats, trucks, whatever. If you shorten it up too hard and too heavy, I think you would limit the amount of duck hunters and monies coming in, and then it would just go downhill from there. That's my opinion. So I'm seeing it from both sides. I'm seeing it from both sides of the fence, and so that's the way I have to. That's the way I have to answer it. 60 days is good. 75 may be better. All right. So 4 or 5 birds and 3 was a couple good groups. Right. So what's your gun of choice?
So the last few years I've been shooting a old A5. That humpback is definitely my gun of choice.
What gauge?
But 12.
Okay.
Definitely 12. Yeah. I've got a 20 gauge Stoger that I play around with here and there. But before that, I actually hunted an old Model 2000 Stoger for like 12 years.
Right.
And that's a funny story for another time. I actually lost it wading through a WMA in Kansas. Water ended up going over my waders. I had to jump on a tree and grab it so I didn't go under, and the gun went down to the bottom. So yeah, that one got left in Kansas. If anybody wants to walk through the park at in Neosho, the WMA at Neosho, you might just find it. Might be a reward on the backside of it if you can get it back to me. But no, that one's long gone. But yeah, I just the A5, as far as like when gun comes out of the box and not having to put shims in it, I love the A5. I can't get away from it. I've got
Now what year is your A5?
So it's the first year of the re-release when it came back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've got an old Belgium, but I don't hunt it. That's just a show gun. That gun, it'll stay a show gun, but yeah, it's the first year of the re-release, so I think it was like 2012.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I have a Belgium 16 that I started hunting with again once I started shooting bismuth, and I just put it in the cabinet. I got a the new Sweet 16 in the Wicked Wings edition. That I'm gonna be. This will be his first year. So, decoys of choice.
Yeah,
Brand.
so I'm not really picky. I love Avian X. I think those are probably some of the best looking decoys, but those are way too pricey for me. I got to a couple years where I was only hunting over Higdons because they had a great veteran program, so you could get a great discount if you bought directly from Higdon. They've since got rid of that and jacked their prices up, so I don't buy Higdon anymore. I haven't bought decoys in about 2 years, so yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do when I go back around to it. We've probably got, I don't know, a few hundred between my dad and myself, and they all get mixed up when we go on these trips. But
right.
Yeah, we do that. I'm a fan of the Texas rig. I do got a bunch of stuff strung up for when we're hunting the deep water. And for the last 5 or 6 years, I haven't touched a spinning wing. I've gone back to a regular traditional jerk rig, and I don't mess with a Mojo or a Lucky Duck at all anymore.
I got 13 Mojos in a box in my shed right now that I don't know the last time I turned on.
Yep. Another thing to take your money. You don't need it. You don't need it to kill birds. You get much more benefit out of the jerk rig with the water sounds and the movement.
Yep. Duck calls.
Yeah.
Now,
So this is.
I actually know your answer because I watched your video. So I am a collector. Okay, so I collect duck calls. I have a lot of them, but what's your preference in duck calls?
So I will always be an echo guy through and through. I grew up watching them. That was the first call, I believe, my dad put in my hands after my uncle put one in his hands, or my great uncle. And I'll always blow an echo duck call. I've actually am working with somebody that wants to sponsor me right now. They saw the video I had the other day about blowing an echo duck call, and he wants me to blow his calls. So I'm working with him right now. I'm not gonna work with him if he can't come down on his prices. That was it. He's talking about trying to get into the polycarbonate deal. So we'll see what goes on there. But yeah, that's just me. I like a single reed open water call. I played around with double reeds, your diamond wood and everything for your timber calls. The way I blow a duck call is much better on an open water call. So that's what I stick with, that kind of single reed echo open water.
Jan Phillips is in the house. Welcome, buddy. I'm glad you could make it. Thanks for coming in. Nothing wrong with echo. Those boys at BB Arkansas know what they're doing. I'm just saying. Let's see here. So we've gone. Okay. All right. So we're going to get a controversy time.
Okay.
Brand of waders.
Oh, this year. So I'm actually there's a wader company that just messaged me today. I think I'm going to start working with them because they're a more affordable line. So we'll see how that goes. But right now I got a brand new pair of Rogers sporting goods in the box still. That's what I was going to hunt this season before these guys reached out to me. But before that, it's frog togs only. That's it for me.
Okay. Camo pattern.
Oh, I'm back and forth. I like my my bottomland, but I'm probably a max 5, max 7 guy at heart.
Okay. What is? All right. RD's asking. I think he's saying Wicked Wings A5. Is that what you have? Is it Wicked Wings A5, or do you have the?
No, sir. I don't make that kind of money.
Okay.
I got the poor man's A5. No, I got
Okay.
the old. It's the Shadowgrass edition of 2012 when it first came back out.
Okay.
Yeah, no Wicked Wing for me. I do got a brand new. It's still brand new Beretta A400 Extreme. Haven't taken the tag off of it. I won it at the Waterfowl banquet last year, in Bottomland, and like I said, I haven't taken the tag off of it. I haven't shot it. I've brought it out the gun case to look at one time, and that's it.
Gotcha. Brand of gear of jackets. Your hunting clothes. What brand do you prefer?
Oh, that's all Frog Togs too. Frog Togs jacket. I tried Gator Wader stuff. It's nice. There's some more economy based stuff on Amazon. It's actually called Game Hide. It comes in max 5 and max 7. I got a lot of that. I do have some banded stuff back when they came out with the utility quarter zip, just because it reminded me of my combat shirts that I wore down range.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a few of those. But yeah, I think banded is probably the most expensive stuff I got, but I like my Frog Togs.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Sitka?
Yeah, we can do without it. Sitka, their whole program, their price tags, and the people that wear it, they can, we got to fix all of that. I hunt with some guys that wear Sitka. I love them to death, but yeah, it's not for me.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave my comments alone just in case I'm asked that question at a later date. This is all on you. Okay. Your favorite duck?
Man, this is a tough one. Favorite duck ever is going to be the green-winged teal. I remember my first trip to Arkansas. We went with my great uncle, my dad. This was 2010, 2011. And I didn't want to shoot any of the mallards. I wanted to shoot a green-winged teal because I've only wood duck hunted up until this point. That's all I've ever done here before we started going to Arkansas.
Right.
And I got old enough to start hunting on my own. I wanted a green-winged teal so bad. And I dropped one, and I remember it to this day. We watched it swim off into the Arkansas River, and I never got it. But yeah, green-winged teal is my bird.
Green wing teal happens to be the first duck I ever shot.
That's
It
awesome.
was the very first duck I ever shot.
Okay.
I was about 7.
You must have been a good shot at 7, hitting them
I
birds
was,
out at
it was at
40
7. I was
yards.
7 years, and I shot him flying. I actually shot 2 teal that day, and both of them were flying. So
That's awesome.
Grant's got a question. He says, a duck you haven't shot, but you want to. What is your what is it you want to what duck do you want to harvest?
Yeah, so I already talked about the fulvus just because that's one on my Grand Slam that I still need to get. I'm actually getting really short on birds there. I'm actually 2 years out from a trip with Breck Dickerson. My buddy Justin and I just booked this a few weeks back now. We're going out to Baja, California to shoot cinnamon in a few years. The guy was a few years out. We're going to go do that. But the number one bird at the top of my hit list that I think is probably the most beautiful duck there is going to be your harlequin.
Right. Okay.
That's the one I really want to get to.
That's your bucket list. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, and because we do happen to have an ammo guy in here who makes ammunition, I think he's still here. I gotta ask, because I'm the kind of guy that will poke the bear. So, what is your favorite shotgun ammo, generalized, for duck hunting?
Generalized. I like your steel. I really like the Kent Fast Steel 2.0 right now. I shot it last year, and I've actually shot it 2 years in a row from when they first released it, and it's probably 2 of my best years as far as harvests has gone, and some of the best shooting I've done. So I'm shooting Kent Fast Steel 2.0, 1,500 feet per second, which is a little bit quick. And you start to worry about bullets bouncing off of each other or pellets. But I shoot a modified. I don't change that. I don't go for like a long range or go to an improved cylinder or anything like that. Straight modified, number 4s for mallards, number 7s for teal. Kent Fast Steel 2.0. I've shot tungsten. I've shot the blend, the speedball from Heavy Shot. I've shot your Brown and Wicked Wing ammo, which, by the way, I've cut one of those open. Don't do that. Don't shoot that Wicked Wing ammo. I've shot regular Heavy Shot. I've shot the Remington, the Winchester Steel. Yeah, I've shot everything, but the Kent and the regular Heavy Shot's probably my favorites.
Okay. I got another question for you from the chat. Grant asked, how many waterfowl mounts did you have and have to mount a harlequin? Okay. I'm just, how many waterfowl mounts do you have?
Let's see. I got Drake Mallard, Drake Pintail, Drake Redhead, Drake Wood Duck. I've got Drake Ringneck, Drake Canvasback, and I've got a Bufflehead, a Widgeon, a Spoonie, and a Green Wing Teal in the freezer. And I'm saving them just to mount at the same time because they're going on top of the hanging dead mount. That's on top of my Canvasback. So I've got all those. I got those up. So yeah, that's it right now. So what is that? I got 8 on the wall and 5 more in the freezer.
Okay. Factory chokes or aftermarket chokes, and what brand?
Aftermarket chokes and old school pure gold modified.
Okay. All right. I have a pure gold improved for my Benelli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those lovely chokes. You can't beat them.
Right. Okay. Any more questions from the chat? Have you shot bismuth yet? Jan Phillips wanting to know if you. He said, "I guess we need to send him a box of Boss." I'm just wondering, have you shot any bismuth shells? Have you pulled the trigger on that one yet?
Yeah. So I've shot the Heavy Shot bismuth. The ones that are, what is it, like $49 a box? I've shot the Boss bismuth as well. And again, great. You get your great knockdown power with it. I got nothing bad to say about the shells, but I'm always going to hold true to it. You shouldn't have to sell a kidney to shoot a duck.
Right.
So I'm gonna stay away from the expensive stuff. We got boats and trips where we're driving 19 hours to get to where we got to go. I'm gonna save my money for that and not the shells.
Okay. Any more questions? We got about 6. Well, yeah, we got about 6 minutes left. Really, we kind of want to push this out to the 2-hour mark and then call it a night. Just go ahead and reiterate to some of the guys in here. Your podcast, your Instagram, your TikTok. How can people find you? Facebook pages, whatever you've got. Just lay it out there.
Yeah. So for the actual organization, you can call it the page for Rewind Waterfowl. It's just going to be at Rewind Waterfowl and everything. Instagram, here at YouTube, TikTok at Rewind Waterfowl. The Facebook page is at Rewind Waterfowl. If you want to follow my my personal Instagram, I've got a lot of stuff on there about dog training and retriever training, and a lot of cool stuff from a bunch of my past trips and even hunting here locally. I got some beautiful pictures of beautiful birds that I've harvested here back when hunting in South Carolina was still decent. You can follow me on Instagram there it's just Duckman John, Jon, Duckman John on Instagram. And for the podcast, I'm exclusive to Spotify right now. I'm trying to get everything hosted with Podbean so I can go out where people can access the podcast in whatever way they choose to listen. But if you're on Spotify, look me up at Rewind Waterfowl. The whole purpose of this, like I said, is I'm really trying to get a lot of the older guys on there and tell some stories about what duck hunting used to be and some of the golden day stories of duck hunting and, what it means to be out there and have some of that fellowship with your guys in the duck blind and in the woods, and what you do and what it used to be like, and see if it helps spark interest to help the youth and the younger guys really try to get duck hunting back to what it used to be. And then also I'm doing the migration series. I've actually booked out the entire calendar. So I now have 37 guests scheduled right now for the migration series on the Atlantic, the Central, and the Mississippi Flyway, from North Dakota and Minnesota all the way down to East Texas and Louisiana. And on the Atlantic Flyway side, from Maine all the way down to the southern tip of Florida. We got a migration series. I'm going to release those periodically throughout the season so we get some real information about what the migration is doing, and we're not relying on the Ducks Unlimited map that's got a bunch of hogwash on it or people that don't really have our best interest trying to tell us what the birds are doing.
Okay.
So,
real quick, Greenhead Father says, what's your favorite strategy for decoy spread?
So this was one I really like to talk about because, anecdotal evidence over, we'll say, 15 years hunting by myself and then 20 years of duck hunting altogether. Your J-hook, it works. It definitely does. Your diver lines, I've hunted over them. You don't need diver lines. That's not how birds raft up in the water. So I always like just to pay attention to wind, where the blind is, of course, where the sun's coming up at or setting, depending on what time of day you're hunting. And I'll just set pods of ducks out. I like to group light ducks together. I like to have my jerk rigs. If I'm running one, I like to have it on the outside of the decoys, kind of separating two different species of ducks. So I'll have a green winged teal close and a pod of mallards closer, and I'll have a jerk rig separating those two. I'll run one on the outside and one on the inside if I'm running 2 jerk rigs. But it's just pods of duck of like species, and I've really found that the pods with like species has drawn in way more birds than trying to go with different lines or into the wind, against the wind, setting up for crosswinds. If you set up right with your blind and or your boat, whatever you're standing behind, if you set up the right way, then all the ducks are going to land into the wind as they should, and they're going to respond much better to pods.
Okay.
Unless you're wood duck hunting.
That's good. That's good strategy, dude. Okay, got it. Anything else? We got about a minute. First of all, Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. I know it was kind of a fast call and get you to come in here tonight. And I do appreciate you doing it. And just so you know, you have an open invite. If you ever see me live on a Monday night and we're just sitting there, a lot of times we'll just sit here and just chat. We're not talking about hardly anything, just anything, whatever just comes up sometimes. But if you see me on one night, you want to come up on panel, you are more than welcome. All you got to do is just let me know you're in chat. I'll say, hey, you want to come up? And you say, yep, you're on. And then we'll just go from there. So you have an open invite for that.
I really appreciate it.
You also have an open invite anytime we're out somewhere and you just want to go hang out. Let me know. I go down to as me and my wife lovingly call Monk's Corner. We call it Monkey Corner. And
that's right. That's accurate.
Yeah, that's accurate. If I'm down there, we go down there quite often, to hang out. And I got some really good friends that live down that way. So, let's get together. Let's, train some dogs together. I got a little pup that needs some water work, a lot more water work. You got 5 labs, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Let's just get together, man. One of these days, if nothing else, go get a burger or something somewhere, or go get some Maurice barbecue or something. I don't care. Go wherever you want to go. And just kind of go hang out a little bit. So, again, you have an open invite for any of that kind of stuff. John, thank you so much. Mark J, you have a good night. Jan, the rest of you guys, I know some Grant and Charles is probably already headed out. Thank the chat room for coming in. Anti, thank you for everything you've done in the chat. Tina, if you're still here, thank you. Mark J, if you're still here, thank you for helping me with the moderations and whatnot. And guys, again, get over there and see Rewind, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can find him. Go listen to his podcast. He's got some really interesting stuff over there, and hopefully one of these days soon I'll be on there, but we'll see what happens. But for the time being, guys, y'all have a great night. Y'all have a great week. Don't forget, it's starting here soon. I've got everything lined up. I got so much stuff. All I gotta do is grab a bag and go. So y'all have a good evening. Y'all take care, and we will see y'all next time on Daddy Duck 365. Y'all have a great night.
All right, thank you, guys. Bye.